Hello and welcome everybody. This is Benjamin Derr. I'll be your presenter for today. We still have about 4 or 5 minutes before we will begin. We have just begun our broadcast, so everybody should be able to see the beginning slide of our presentation today. I will go on mute until we begin in about 4 or 5 minutes at 10:30. Thank you very much. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. If there's any last-minute attendees, they can definitely feel free to catch up. My name is Benjamin Derr, and thank you for attending our presentation today called Extending the Life and Value of ISA and TMG Server. Today we're going to talk about some of the history of TMG and ISA Server that organizations have deployed, our history with it, how Celestix is involved with ISA and TMG Server, and talk about the future roadmap for either maintaining what you have or examining alternative options and how Celestix can help you with that. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to use the questions or chat panel in the GoToWebinar menu, and definitely feel free to ask any questions. At the end, I will open up the bridge and allow you to ask questions at that time as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So today we'll do a quick introduction of myself, Benjamin Derr, and Celestix, and why you should care about us. We'll talk about the current state of TMG and ISA Server, as I'm sure most of you are aware of where we stand today and what Microsoft's roadmap is. We'll talk about options for extending your existing infrastructure, and then we'll wrap it up and talk about some next steps you can take today to really start thinking about the future post-TMG. So with that, my name is Benjamin Derr, as I mentioned. I am a senior sales engineer for North America with Celestix Networks. I've been with Celestix for about 9 months now, but worked with Celestix for about the past 6 or 7 years at various other companies in my previous employment. I am a certified Microsoft Systems Engineer, MCSA, MCITP, all those good acronyms that everybody has. And really I focus for my 18-year career on infrastructure and information security. So what does that really mean? My core disciplines are really around core infrastructure. So how do we manage our infrastructure? How do we set up our core infrastructure? Things like Active Directory, security, all those fundamental services, as well as remote access. A little bit about Celestix Networks. We've actually been in business for going on 15 years now and got started in 1999. Interestingly enough, we really started around making purpose-built appliances for RSA Secure ID. From there on, we branched into various remote access, network devices, and storage devices. In about the mid-2000s, we did a little shift and started focusing on the Microsoft remote access platforms. Microsoft obviously made ISA Server, UAG Server, and other solutions, and what we do is we provide those platforms, albeit with our management frameworks and our purpose-built appliances, and really work to make those a little more turnkey solution for our customers and simpler to deploy. We are a worldwide organization headquartered in Fremont, California in the Bay Area, as well as offices in the United Kingdom, Singapore, Japan, and India. Currently, we have about 5,000 customers under existing support contracts with about 25,000 devices deployed worldwide. And we have many global alliances. We are Microsoft's largest hardware OEM provider worldwide, as well as alliances with organizations such as WebSense, GFI, and other vendors in the security remote access markets. So let's talk a little bit about where we stand today with ISA and TMG. First thing I want to talk to you about is really some important milestone dates. So for those of you that have read the announcements from Microsoft, this will be a little rehash. And for those of you that have not, this may be a little bit of an eye-opener or some new information for you. So first off, in September 2012, Microsoft really announced the sunset dates for Forefront TMG. This was not an immediate discontinuation of the product or support, but rather just an announcement that most of us have been waiting for of Microsoft saying that no further revisions or versions will be coming along in the future. In fact, Microsoft really was getting out of the unified threat management market as a whole. In April 2015, mainstream support from Microsoft will end. So at this point, Microsoft will not be releasing any security updates or hotfix updates for their product. In December 2015, their web protection services infrastructure will be decommissioned as well, and this includes the web content filtering updates in their malware updates as well as their network inspection system updates. In January 2018, we as Celestix will be ending our support for ISA 2006 server. So even though Microsoft is not supporting it from a call-in perspective, we will still continue to support these platforms until 2018. April 2020, Microsoft will end their extended support for TMG. So keep in mind, April 2015 is their mainstream support, and if you opt to purchase the extended support from Microsoft, that's when they will end that. However, we will end our support for TMG as of January 2023. So from a viability standpoint, you still have another 9 years until support options are no longer available from any organization. Now, I should notice that this is simply break-fix support. We will not be issuing any code updates, security patches, or anything of that nature. This is simply a matter of, hey, I'm having an issue with my TMG deployment. Can you help us? And that is what our support will be limited to. So let's talk a little bit about where we see TMG and help to focus the rest of the conversation here for today. What we've seen based on our history with ISA and TMG for the last 7 years or so is really 4 primary scenarios or solutions that customers deploy TMG and ISA with. They are the forward web proxy and content filtering scenario, where we are doing URL filtering, HTTPS inspection, malware inspection for outbound internet traffic. The second scenario is the reverse web proxy for application publishing. Outlook, Web Access, Outlook Anywhere, ActiveSync, SharePoint, CRM, Link, all those scenarios where we are allowing external users access to our internal applications. The third scenario is around the remote access or network remote access with client-based and site-to-site VPN access. And lastly, the last point scenario that we've seen TMG and ISA deploy in is really around the enterprise application filtering firewall, or that perimeter firewall or DMZ firewall. This may go hand in hand, obviously, with the other solutions, and you may have a mix or combination of one or more of these solutions in your environment today. So based on that, let's talk a little bit about some options for extending your infrastructure. So what can you do to either extend the life of TMG today or look at alternative solutions? Now, we all know that TMG and ISA they're fantastic products. They're great products. You can't beat them for the price. They're very cost effective, and simply they just work. So some organizations, they still have ISA 2004 deployed. They still have ISA 2006 deployed, and nobody's saying you have to move off them today. But obviously, as good security partners and trusted advisors to our customers, we want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and planning for the future. So first, we're going to talk about content filtering, which you can do around extending content filtering options with TMG. And really, we have 3 primary options that we've seen with our customers and discussed with our customers. The first one is integration with either GFI or WebSense. GFI and WebSense both make in plug-in filters for their solutions to integrate with TMG, so that they can leverage, so the TMG and ISA can leverage the databases and the filtering databases from those products, but you can still route all the traffic and authentication through the TMG product there. The second solution that we see around content filtering is really proxy chaining with on or off-premise services. This could be either a cloud-based service or something that you have on-premise. Again, either GFI, WebSense, or even a third-party solution. Proxy chaining is a feature of TMG and ISA, where TMG will forward proxy requests to an upstream server. In this case, this would be the filtering request server. Lastly, this is a little more advanced, and we've seen this with more of the cloud services, especially around authentication tunnels, where you would stand up a site-to-site GRE type of tunnel to those providers to route your internet-bound traffic out to them, so you can take advantage of those services. Obviously, it is more advanced, and it does obviously involve setting up a network tunnel between you and your provider, and there has to be a level of trust, but definitely a viable option with TMG, as TMG does support site-to-site VPN capabilities. Let's talk a little about application publishing and what you can do, obviously, from the future perspective there. So first option obviously is maintain what you have. Nothing changes for you. There are very good reasons to keep what you have. It's simplicity. You understand it. You know, it could be that it just works. You know, it's a black box publishing. It just works. It's doing its thing. From a security update standpoint, obviously the OS is still supported for a couple more years, so you're still very secure there. Lastly, it has a feature that nobody else has. One of the more common scenarios that I've deployed TMG in lately has really been around certificate-based authentication for Active Sync or Outlook Web Access. Very few other products in the market do this to the degree or to the strength that TMG does. If migration is something you have to do, you know, either through a management decision or a supportability standpoint or operationally, obviously a very good time to take stock of your application requirements, you know, evaluate your business requirements. Look at your security threats and risks. You know, they've changed in the years since TMG has been deployed. Obviously, there hasn't been development on the TMG side from a web application firewall perspective or filtering perspective to really take advantage of the newer threats. One of the funny components around TMG and their web application filtering was that you could set various attributes on filtering requests. For example, you could block GET requests or you could block POST requests. But nobody ever did that. Nobody ever verified normalization or high-bit characters. There's options, but nobody ever did that. But again, you know, time for you to take stock and look at the future and what's out there. And lastly, from the Microsoft perspective and what we are encouraging our customers to do is really take a look at this new R2 web application proxy from Microsoft. It is a newer feature, and we'll talk about more about it in the next slide here. So what is the web app proxy? You know, why do we devote our own slide to it? Well, the answer is really straightforward. It is a newer product, and most of the people I've been talking to, administrators, don't really understand it or haven't really been exposed to it. So we just want to give you a little bit of information. I'm just kind of tease you a little bit on it. The web application proxy, when Microsoft has developed it, really took a look at, you know, what do they do good today and where is web traffic going in the future. And obviously the big trend is mobile devices, application-specific authentication on these devices, where these devices won't support things like integrated authentication or won't support certificates. So take advantage of the newer protocols out there. It understands federation protocols, understands OAuth, which is used for primarily the mobile platforms. Obviously understands Kerberos for your Windows environment, as well as two-factor authentication. It authenticates using Active Directory Federation services. So for organizations that have deployed ADFS in your environment, it's a no-brainer. It's just a proxy server for that. For organizations that have not deployed ADFS, I could say, why haven't you yet? But the answer is probably fairly evident. But something that you definitely want to think about as you grow and as time passes. Federation services is not just for on-premise applications, but for all users utilizing cloud applications or software as a service applications. And lastly, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, it is a direct replacement for your ADFS 2.0 proxy. So if you're using ADFS on either Server 2008 or Server 2012, this is a replacement for that core role. So it will act as the same functions with the ADFS proxy in issuing claims, but will also allow access to your on-premise applications too. The third area I wanted to discuss was the client-based and site-to-site VPN capabilities and replacement options for those. So the first option obviously is, you know, if you're using traditional VPN, you can definitely keep what you have today. You know, there is not a lot of changes with the IPsec protocol. There's no changes with TP-TP protocols. And by maintaining what you have, you really don't have to worry about your end users. You can migrate to Server 2012 or to Unified Remote Access, which we'll talk a little more about here in a second. And lastly, you can migrate to Server 2012 for your site-to-site VPN. So by maintaining what you have today, you just maintain your current investment. You don't have to make any changes. Users have the same exact experience. Nothing's going to radically change with TMG and VPN. From a product standpoint, nothing dramatically changed in the years since TMG's release in terms of VPN. I mean, the VPN we all love and either hate as support or rely on for our business users. However, by migrating to Server 2012 Arch Unified Remote Access, we do have a couple of new features that may be of interest to you. First and the biggest is really around the Microsoft Direct Access solution for your managed Windows 7, Windows 8 enterprise clients. Direct Access is a seamless, always-on network connectivity solution, and unlike traditional VPN, it is bi-directional. So not only can users have access to corporate resources, you as support folks and IT pros can access those remote endpoints as if they were sitting on the internal network. It does contain the traditional client-based VPN access, so for your unmanaged clients, your down-level clients, partners, Linux, Mac systems, you still have that same capability there. And also, unlike TMG, the Server 2012 R2 does support IKE version 2. IKE version 2 is an IPsec VPN feature, and the two things it allows for is really around the automatic reconnect. So, for example, if you switch hotspots, behind the scenes, you'll have automatic reconnection for your VPN connections, as well as dynamic routing. And lastly, for the site-to-site VPN functionality, if you are using that today for your branch office connectivity, definitely would look at the Server 2012 version versus TMG, especially for around your cloud services. Again, this supports IKE version 2, which allows for those automatic reconnects, and especially for your cloud services, dynamic routing instead of static routing tables. Lastly, the fourth area that we've seen customers use TMG for was really around that enterprise application firewall and protecting, the inside from the external threats. As you can see, there is no direct replacement here. So, unfortunately, you would be looking at a third-party solution to manage those threats. And we don't have any recommendations for you, but there's obviously a lot of players in this market. So with that, the question becomes, well, Celestix, how are you going to help us go in the future? What are you going to do for us, or can you help us make some of these decisions? And the answer is, we do actually have a new product launch that we just launched called our Cloud Edge Security Solution. And what it does is really encapsulate some of these features that you are looking for in the future here. So first off, just like our previous systems, they are purpose-built appliances. Like you had with your MSA or WSA appliances there, we do provide fault-tolerant components. We do build to scale to various workloads. And it is based on the Server 2012 R2 platform. And we do provide hardening for this based upon Microsoft best practices. So the first feature it really contains is really around that client-based remote access. For those of you that followed Celestix, you know that we launched a DAX appliance last year around the 2012 release to manufacturing appliance line. This year we've taken that to the next level and include all the unified remote access components. So it includes the direct access as well as the IPsec and the traditional VPN capabilities here. So supports your IPsec VPN tunnels as well as your PPTP tunnels and your SSTP tunnels. It also provides branch and cloud connectivity. Obviously, when we talk about that, we talk about site-to-site VPN connections. It does support IKE v2, and it is obviously compatible with Amazon and Azure. So if you are leveraging those services and do need to establish tunnel connectivity between your networks and your infrastructure, the service systems up there in the clouds, you can use our product to provide those tunnels. And lastly is around the web application access, which is a big component there of TMG and moving forward. As we talked a little bit before, this is the web application proxy. It is integrated with ADFS, so if you do not have that infrastructure, we can definitely help you plan that out and bring that to deployment. And it supports today's and tomorrow's protocols. Again, not just Windows credentials, but things like the OAuth protocols, MS Forms-based authentication, your Office-based authentication. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for any questions that we may have. Definitely if you have any questions, and I see some in the chat window already.